So after looking into the topics of how to position your sound source, how to give it directivity, and how to create a distance to the sound source, we now want to look into the topic of how to deal with your actual audio. We always have to keep in mind what is our source audio and which plugin we want to use for that. Additionally, if you want to create changes, you can't just always use the same tracks. So you have to have some techniques at hand to enhance our flexibility. We will also look into the topic of how to maintain your localization. So if a sound source is coming from one direction, but you want to also let it sound from a different direction, how you can deal with that. And the last thing we want to talk about is how to build a basic scene. We can just use background ambiences in Ambisonics recordings, or we can build our own scene using stereo recordings, or even mono recordings. So let's get started. Let's look at our example with the wind chime here. I will rename this for now, and then what I want to do is move the sound source around. I look at the waveform and I see different transients. So what I want to do is place this transient on the left side of the room and the next set of transients to my right. Let's do that manually at first. What we heard is that we know that the sound source is moving. So what we realize as a listener is that this sound source isn't here and another one is there, but this sound source is moving towards the right side. So how do I create the impression that I have two different sound sources here? I'm gonna go and duplicate this track. By pressing the S key, I can make a cut in the sample. I will then set this room encoder to this position and the second room encoder to that position. This way, when I will play back the sounds, the first sound will be on my left side and the second sound on my right side. So what you also probably noticed is this little fade here. This fade is what we want to avoid, because then we will hear the decay from the first sound and the fade in from the second sound, thus messing up our positioning. So what I want to do is cut this really tight and only make a short fade in. This I want to extend as much as I can and create another fade. Let's listen to it again. This way, we really achieve sound separation. This editing method is called A/B edit or checkerboarding. It's a standard technique for film audio post-production or any other kind of audio post-production, but here it is even more important that we get the separation not only to have a smooth transition between scenes, but also between objects, so that we don't mess with our localization. After this example, I want to show you how to build a scene. We'll start with some background sounds. And for this time, I want to create new tracks, but use the stereo encoder. So when we start to build a scene, we will generally use ambience sounds. These are sounds that are just containing an environment background source. By Command-Alt clicking solo, I can solo in place, thus deactivating the solo function on the previous track. So what we can notice is that all these tracks have a different noise pitch, so to say. This one is really bright. This one is lower. And the last one is really bright. So what I like to do is, when positioning the sounds around me, is to think of that when I'm building a scene. Let's enhance the stereo width of this first signal. Notice here how, due to all the processing that is done, so encoding into Ambisonics and even more importantly the decoding stage, so working with HRTFs, introduces phase issues. These mess with our perception of the noise pitch, so you have to be really careful to place those sounds in your space. Actually, when I listen to these ambiences, I want to use the first one as a height information. To further enhance the effect, I have to get rid of some of the low frequencies. This way, I have more space to work with the other ambiences. Let's place this in the back. So let's listen to them all together. I want to correct the EQ settings here as well. So you see that I have to work a lot to make these different sounding ambiences sound as if they were one. You have to keep in mind that they encode different distances. Oftentimes the microphone techniques are different, so they have different stereo images as well, so you have to adapt the width for that. And you have to sort of think of how to build the scene together instead of just summing it. So in stereo and even in 5.1, we oftentimes sum the ambiences so that they are sounding like they're together and really coherent. You can think of that as in a frequency range, you have different aspects in the lower parts, in the mids and in the heights, and they all have different weightings towards some frequency ranges. And if you want to bring them together, you have to bring them together on the frequency spectrum as well, but also in the depth. So you can build a scene by using ambiences that are encoding for sounds that are near to you, and then mix this first layer with another layer that encodes for sounds that are more far away. In immersive spatial audio, it relies on the same basics, but still is a bit different, as you have much more space to work with. I would consider not to use too many layers for every single degree of your sound sphere, but get some ambiences that are sounding good together and know about your intention where to put them and which factors contribute to a decision where you want to place the sound. In conclusion, oftentimes the most glued together ambience would be a direct Ambisonics recording. So let's have a look how we would integrate an Ambisonics recording. So I just imported a recording which is consisting of 4 different channels. If you just see it like that, it's just a multi-channel audio file. We don't know yet if it's 4 audio channels in some arbitrary microphone setup or if it's in Ambisonics format, first order. This is indeed an Ambisonics format which I downloaded from an online library. I will include some links where you can find free Ambisonics recordings. So you can see this is my standard track template with 36 channels, and I'm sending this to the Ambisonics bus. Still, this is only consisting of 4 channels. Let's play that back. This is working quite well. This is because Ambisonics is able to just deduce these 4 channels as my first order, and all my other channels, my 36 channels, are left out. This doesn't mean that Ambisonics isn't working when I don't encode for all these channels. It just means that all these additional channels, so my 32 additional channels, would include some spatial resolution additionally. But if I'm working in a higher order and want to include a lower order Ambisonics format, that is no problem. One more possibility to deal with stereo ambiences is duplicating one ambience and using it in different positions. But this won't make us happy, as we're just playing back the same sound sources. So there's one neat little trick that is also well known in the film audio post-production workflow. I'll just get different areas within my same recording and copy and cut them up to taste. This way I will have the exact same surrounding, but in different time positions. This will make my ambience sound much wider. I can now play with my EQ again. I can even boost some frequencies to get a different sounding environment. Make sure that you don't have any sounds that are easily recognizable. For instance, a really loud bird. This will make you recognize the sound in the different parts as well and will break the immersion. Another really more practical way to deal with different ambiences at the same time is not using the stereo but the multi-encoder. I will get my multi-encoder up here. And as I have 3 different stereo tracks that I want to route into this multi-encoder, I will use 6 input channels. I then have to delete this send and add another send. Call this Ambisonics bus. I have to delete the stereo encoder here. And on this one as well. And on the first one. And I can nest all these tracks in my Ambisonics bus. So right now, 36 channels of my track will be routed to the Ambisonics bus. But this is not what I want, because what this track outputs is still the stereo format. So I will use the stereo format, 1 and 2, the output, and route this to 1 and 2 of this bus track. For the second track, I still have to use the output source of my track, 1 and 2, but this time route that to 3 and 4 of the Ambisonics bus. For the last thing, I want to use 1 and 2 as well, but 5 and 6. This way, all my 6 channels in this bus are routed to different objects. So let's start. 1 and 2 I want to route in the front. 3 and 4 on top of me. 5 and 6 behind me. So I had a little mistake in here. I falsely named this Ambisonics bus. I wanted to make an ambience bus with that. Route this ambience bus, all my 36 channels, to my Ambisonics bus and include all of these ambiences into the ambience bus where it gets encoded. Here I now have total control over my ambiences, and I even can lock the directions and rotate the whole scene if I want to. So as we learned about checkerboarding, we now have to apply that to this scene as well if we want to include another scene. So when we now have built this basic scene here with our ambiences, what we want to do now, if we want to create a narrative where the scene is changing, all of my preferences for each of the tracks will be different in the next scene. And when I automate these, they will create artifacts. So what we learned here with our instrument, that we have to cut and put the next sound source on another track, we also have to do this with our ambiences, but in a bigger style. So I will duplicate this bus, as this will just copy all of my tracks nested into this folder with all of its routing. I will call this ambience bus B, this ambience bus A. I want to make sure that these fades overlap, because most of the time for these scene transitions I want to have them smooth. Localization is not a big part of a problem here, because these are just background ambiences and they don't move. So let's take a listen. If you're working with picture, you clearly have a transition point on the frame where the picture is changing to the next scene. But if you're just working with audio, you can create even smoother transitions. So let's have a listen again. This is sounding smoother to me. So the next thing we want to do is add another scene with some background ambiences. But for that we don't want to include another ambience bus, but rather really use the checkerboarding technique. This means that our next scene will be placed on this ambience bus here again. But what this also means is that we have changing parameters of the position for this scene when we build this scene and for this scene. So we have to include automation to take care of that. There's plenty of space left here because we transferred our next ambience onto this bus. This means we won't hear any parameters being changed, but this is all happening quietly in the background here. We will look at automation in the next videos. I will show you my shortcuts for working with automation and how to create them. And then we will see how we can apply them.